Karl Mosgofian, who has spent 7 years as a CIO of Gainsight, joining us.
AI is critical to customer success because you can never hire enough customer success managers to do a high touch with all of your customers. There's got to be some automation. And I think AI is really going to help unlock the ability to give a really great customer experience. It's very rare that something just delights me. TruPeer was one of those things. When I saw TruPeer and I started playing with it myself and I recorded a video and changed the avatar or the voice or the colors and things, it was so easy and it was genuinely fun. And that's not something you usually say about enterprise software.
Hi everyone, this is Nikunj, founding member at TruPeer. Today with me, I have Karl Mosgofian, who's been the CIO of Gainsight for the last 7 years and has been responsible for building their IT teams from scratch. And he spent the last 30 years in IT teams like Harmonic and Cadence, and he has some quite interesting views on AI adoption in enterprises. And today we'll be discussing some of that. Karl, so nice to have you here. Welcome to Bangalore in India. I see that you have a interest for cricket and Indian food. How is it this time, since you've managed teams in India before as well? Do you see a change in the new India?
Absolutely. My first trip was in 2003, and so a lot has changed. I got caught up in cricket fever because as I was flying from London to Delhi, India and Pakistan were actually playing in the World Cup. And so I got caught up in the excitement and have sort of followed cricket a little bit ever since, and even had a chance to play a little bit when I visit my teams, and it's great fun. So I've had the great fortune to visit India many times, and I always love visiting.
So that's really good to hear, and it's really great to have you here. We have some questions. Just want to scratch your brain a bit on your vast experience managing IT teams across geographies and across time zones in the last 30 years, right? So the first one is about playbooks that you have seen panning out in the last few years. Since you've seen customer experience so closely at Gainsight, how do you see customer success evolving with AI now?
AI is critical to customer success because you can never hire enough customer success managers to do a high touch with all of your customers. There's got to be some automation. And I think AI is really going to help unlock the ability to give a really great customer experience to all of your customers.
Definitely. Similar to customer success, we also have change management is where somewhere IT teams have been evolving. And do you have any take on how AI is impacting change management? What's something which you knew earlier and will now be an AI playbook for change management?
So I think there's a couple things, but the main one is that AI is going to give us some new tools that let us scale much more effective change management. So there's an interesting comparison to customer success. If you could spend individual time with each person on a team, you could do a lot to bring them along. But of course, that's not practical. So we need tools like video that help us reach a lot of people really effectively. And that's true internally for change management on, let's say, a new feature of an internal system. And it's very similar to the need of customer success to do the same thing externally. In both cases, we're trying to drive adoption. And in both cases, I think AI is giving us terrific new tools to do that.
That brings us an interesting point. And I think that's one of the few things that gotten you excited about TruPeer as well. We'd love to understand more. What got you excited about TruPeer? What are your thoughts on the platform? I think you've used it as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when you see something that really excites you, it's fun. I see so many new technologies, new vendors, and it's very rare that something just delights me. And so TruPeer was one of those things that I instantly understood it. I instantly understood how to use it. One of the things that's tough with technology is that quite often it's wonderful stuff. It does good things, but it's hard to use. And even things that seem easy to use at first, when users really sit down and they try and do sophisticated things, they hit roadblocks, they get frustrated. And so I loved the fact that TruPeer was so easy to use and produce such a fantastic output. It overcomes this huge objection, which is most people hate making videos. And yet we know that video is such a good way to communicate to people. But most people do not want to have the pressure of trying to record a perfect video. They may have some video editing tool, but they don't want to be video editors. They want to just say the basic information and have someone else take care of it. And in the past, that meant going to somebody in marketing or something, and it was very inaccessible for most people. I love the fact that TruePeer democratizes video for really everyone in the company.
Thanks for the kind words. It is a great encouragement, and especially to hear it from you. Since you mentioned, like we discussed change management, customer success, what are other use cases where you see, AI or specifically, softwares like TruePeer? Where do you see TruePeer being used in terms of use cases?
So it's interesting. When I first saw TruePeer, there were some immediate sort of obvious use cases that I could think of, like in customer success, around product information, internal sales enablement was another one that seemed like a very obvious thing. But one of the things I found was the more I thought about it, the more use cases I thought of. And I realized that virtually all enterprise video consists of someone sharing their screen and explaining something, whether that's the HR team showing some new thing about how to do something in their system, or it's IT rolling out some changes in the ERP or the CRM. There's so many different groups that are doing that. And some are internal. The security team has some alert they want to tell people, hey, we want to show you how to do this new thing. Or it's external. It could be product information. It could be support information. And so I started to realize I'm not sure that there's a department in the company that couldn't use this. Some of them, it's more obvious and it's a big deal for them, and some it's a nice to have. But almost everybody in any enterprise could get some value from having a tool like this.
That actually brings me to an interesting follow-up question. What do you think would happen, when every screen recording and document in a company becomes searchable by AI? What do you think the impact of this change could be?
I think it's huge. Search in general has become a real problem, a real challenge for companies because there's so much data. And so finding the thing that's actually going to help you is a real challenge now. And so I'm really excited to see TruePeer moving into that space and saying, let me be able to search the content of these videos and take you right to where you need to be, essentially giving you some of the same experience you might get on YouTube, but in the enterprise with your enterprise content. It's really fantastic. It doesn't do you any good to have a ton of wonderful content if people can't find it. And so the search piece is an important element of any kind of content system.
Definitely. While we are selling to enterprises, just want to understand some more, parts on that. According to you, what's the best way to take a successful AI pilot from one department and roll it out company-wide without falling apart? How do you see SaaS rollouts happening within enterprises?
So I will give you my completely biased CIO answer, which is go to the CIO, go to IT.
Yeah.
That's our job. Our job is to help the whole company take advantage of technology. And nowadays, you don't have to go to IT. Anybody can whip out their credit card or go use some free service. Obviously, hopefully, there are some limits around security and things like that at your company, but still, most people have a lot of ability to do things without working with IT. But there's a huge value in having centrally managed tools that the whole company can take advantage of, and also make sure that you don't end up with 10 different tools in 10 different departments that do similar things. And so I think the best way to get enterprise value out of a lot of these tools is to take more of an enterprise approach, and that means driving it through IT.
Got it. Interesting that you bring up CIOs, because we have some questions about specifically the CIO organization or the CIO team. How would you advise companies to handle security in a world where employees may use their personal tools, personal subscriptions to become more efficient? How would you advise them to use the company's tools?
Well, the first thing is you really need to give people a standard supported tool. You can't just say no, right? A good example is when we first started seeing all these AI note-taking tools, security got very nervous. This is very sensitive data. A lot of those were new companies. They weren't being vetted. People were signing up for free and just using them. So they wanted to stop that. But it was very important that rather than just saying no to all those tools, that we say, here is the tool that we have looked at. We have done the security review, and it's okay to use this. So you can't just say no to people. They'll find their own way. And so I think that's true, very much true of a lot of these AI tools. And again, it's why it's important to really have the help of IT to drive a company-wide standard so that you really do have secure tools.
Makes sense. Where do you see TruePeer fit in a CIO's charter? Like, what are the immediate benefits of TruePeer that you see? What is the potential in the future for an organization to use TruePeer? especially from a CIO standpoint? Where do you see that?
I think the biggest thing is for internal technology, one of the things that's most frustrating for CIOs is that we go out and buy a lot of great things, but they don't always get fully utilized. We're always very concerned to make sure we're getting the full value of what we have. But generally, the barrier to that is really the understanding of the users of how to use those tools effectively. And so we're constantly trying to figure out how to do a better job of driving adoption and training internally. And that's where I think video really plays a big role, because it's the way that people are used to consuming content now. It's much more efficient and effective. And the fact of the matter is, if you're trying to explain how to use some technology, it almost always involves sharing a screen and actually literally showing it to you. And so video is just the natural place to do that.
Makes sense. I mean, there are so many Zoom calls that people have a lot of company knowledge recorded in, and now they can just use TruePeer for that. So that's quite an interesting, incentive for the CIO as well. My next question is about ROI. So everyone's under pressure to show AI ROI to their board, but the benefits right now are fuzzy, right? Like there are intangible and tangible benefits. What metrics actually matter versus vanity metrics that just sound good in presentations?
So when it comes to change management or video tools, I think adoption is really the key thing. So when you can show either faster adoption or better adoption or both, I think that's a true measure of the value you're getting from those kind of tools. But I also think there are some intangibles that are worth considering. Everyone wants to measure, and we need to measure. We have to have an ROI. But I also think that when you're using video effectively, you're really engaging people in a deeper way. And I think the value of that is tremendous.
Correct. And of course, there's ROI in the sense that when you're using tools like TruePeer, you're saving a lot on the marketing agency costs, right? Like if they want to make professional videos, it takes them thousands of bucks probably for just a few minutes of content. So there's ROI, there's a tangible part, and there's intangible ones as well, like you said.
Right. So there's ROI for the internal use case and the external. In the internal use case, I think it's primarily adoption, both the speed of adoption, the time to value, and the quality of the adoption. How deeply do people really understand how to use these tools? Externally, there's additional ROI, because internally you probably wouldn't spend a lot of money on those videos most of the time. And I think when people have access to something like this, they'll probably produce a lot more video than they used to, and change management will just get a lot better. Externally, quite often companies are spending a lot of money because they're actually doing videos for customers and prospects. There, I think there's more of a hard ROI potentially, because I think TruePeer can actually replace a lot of that spend. And by the way, it not only replaces the spend, it makes things way faster. And agility is so important. Things move so fast now that if you have to take a week, 2 weeks, a month to produce a beautiful video at a high cost, by the time that month has passed, things have changed already. You want to be able to get that video out very quickly.
Makes sense. That's what we use in our conversations as well, and it's spot on. I think one of the last questions that we had was about, so you describe your role as an enabler rather than a blocker when it comes to AI security. What's your framework for making quick decisions on whether a new AI use case is worth the security risk as a CIO?
I think in general, the kind of data being stored is a key determining factor. The bar is higher when the data is more sensitive. And so I think most security teams now are taking a tiered approach so that they're not trying to boil the ocean on every single vendor that comes through, but they're also making sure to do a deep dive on the ones that are working with really sensitive data. I think that's the key thing that vendors need to understand, is to be very clear and be able to articulate what data is actually being used and how it's being used, and also to architect their tools in a way that minimizes the attack surface. There's so much great knowledge in the heads of people who aren't necessarily good at making videos. Could be someone in engineering or product. They've built a great new feature. They really want to explain that feature to people, and the company really needs that. Whether it's internal or external, they really need to understand how to use that. And in the past, it's been very hard to get that knowledge out of the head of that person to the people who need it. And so the thing that's been really exciting to me about TruePeer is that it gives you that opportunity for someone who has great knowledge, but is not necessarily a professional video producer, to get that knowledge out and turn it into a video that's highly consumable, searchable, usable to the people who need it. I think that's going to add so much value.
So, Karl, if you have to describe TruePeer in one word, what would you say?
I think it would be fun. And that's not something you usually say about enterprise software. But when I saw TruePeer and I started playing with it myself and I recorded a video and changed the avatar or the voice or the colors and things, it was so easy and it was genuinely fun. And I realize I'm a CIO and I'm supposed to just talk about metrics and ROI and that stuff. But I appreciate having technology that's genuinely fun to use. And TruePeer falls into that category for me.
Awesome. Thanks for the kind words, Karl. It's really encouraging to hear such good feedback from someone like you. All right. So just before we go, Karl, any advice that you have for the new age AI companies right now who are building for enterprises? Any advice, any piece of words that you would like to share?
I think be very focused about real business outcomes that you're going to create for your customers. I think it's easy to sometimes get excited about technology for its own sake, but there have to be real outcomes. And just because someone looks at your product and says this is wonderful, they have to then sell it internally. So they do need an ROI. They do need to be able to articulate that value. And so be ready to help them with that. And the other thing I would say is pay attention to security, because it is going to be a showstopper if you're not doing the right things.
Makes sense. Thanks a lot for joining us. This was really insightful. We'd love to have you around later as well.